Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, one you love the most, Niall Hassan, back with a brand new episode here on The Truth, back once again with my boy AJ Pontiano. AJ, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing great. How you doing now?
I'm doing great as well. Fingers crossed that the video actually does its part this time. I know I said in the previous two podcasts that we were trying to get the actual video portion to be recorded as part of our video podcast. I think I fixed it. I really do. I think because I was looking at it and I think I just like silly me kind of forgot to like allow video, but it's weird because you and I are like looking at each other and we're able to see our camera. So I don't know what was going on there, but I think I fixed it. If not, you guys are just listening to the audio version on Spotify. But if it does work, this is our first video on this YouTube channel. Weird to think that about 3.5 years of doing this podcast, this would be the first video that I've actually done. But anyways, guys, we're here to talk fantasy football today. We are doing a 14-team mock draft. We recently did a mock draft on Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard, and AJ was the fourth overall selection. I was the sixth overall selection. This is our seventh mock draft or eighth mock draft, somewhere around that range. So we've talked a lot about these players, but we like to talk about them again, maybe a little bit more briefer this time, just because we've already talked about them, but why we kind of drafted the guys we drafted. And for some reason, 14 teams seem to be like the best mock drafts that I have. I don't know why. I don't know if it's positioned or what, but it should be fun. It should be exciting. So CMAC went 101, CD went 102, Bijan 103, and you selected Tyreek Hill 104.
Yeah, Tyree kind of just fell into my lap. He's usually the first wide receiver off the board. And then out of nowhere, Bijan was drafted third overall by the computer. You usually don't see him until probably like pick
Yeah, that was
8,
weird.
7, 8. Like it's usually around that range you see him go. But out of nowhere, I'm just going to spoil the next pick. Another pick was running back right there. So
Yeah.
it's the computer's learning. I mean, they're changing it up. But Tyreek Hill, I think he's still the best wide receiver in the NFL at the moment. I think he could try to go for 2,000 again this year. I believe he was 210 yards, something like that off. He's injured like the last 3 games. He had a foot injury. Apparently, we found out he doesn't play in socks. That was crazy to figure out, but yeah, no, Tyreek, I think he still might be a number one wide receiver to come off the board, especially now because I think Waddle should be healthy all year. That should open up the field a little bit more for Tyreek, even though the field's always open for Tyreek.
Yeah, you mentioned Brees Hall 105, a weird selection there, but I was happy because at 106, I got Justin Jefferson, my Viking. Yeah, if I get Justin Jefferson at 106, I'm extremely excited. I don't usually see him going past the fourth overall selection, but Jay Jets, I mean, obviously last year was riddled with injuries. I think I've never actually had a fantasy share of Justin Jefferson, and I'm a huge Vikings fan, so I'd love if this was my selection, but he is going to be the number one wide receiver. I know there's some question marks about quarterback play, and I understand that, but Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy, whoever the quarterback is, they're going to get him the ball. That's what Jaron Hall and Nick Mullins did last year. So I think this is a no doubt pick in Justin Jefferson. The biggest thing is staying healthy, but you can't really predict injuries. And relatively healthy, knock on wood. Or relatively, he's stayed healthy, knock on wood. Hopefully that continues this year. Jamar 107, Amon-Ra 108, AJ Brown 109, Saquon 110, Taylor 111, Wilson 112, Puka Nacua 113, Devontae 114, Marvin Harrison 201, Gibbs 202, Olave 203, Kyron Williams 204, Etienne 205, Josh Allen 206, Derrick Henry 207, Drake London 208, and I go with Devon Achane 209. That was the first Devon Achane share I believe I've taken in a mock draft. I do like Achane a lot. I am a little bit concerned just because I feel like he's not going to be on the field as much as I'd like him to. And I understand it's the different day and age with the running back position, but when he's on the field, tremendous productivity. He's a great PPR receiving back, a great overall back in general. It was one of those things at 209. I wanted a good RB1. The biggest thing is how often is he going to be on the field with Raheem and Jalen Wright. I'm still going with A-Chain there, so I was pleased at 209. Laporta 210, and you selected Michael Pittman 211.
Yeah, Pittman, I went two wide receivers, which is a little bit uncommon for me, but I need to try out some different type of styles of drafting. I get a very similar groove of two running backs in the first 3 rounds or first 2 rounds, two running backs. But Pittman, I think he has all the opportunity in the world. Anthony Richardson has some of the highest upside out of any quarterback. We saw it a little bit last year. His throwing ability kind of limited in his last game before the full injury when he was out for the year. He was already dealing with a shoulder injury there, but Michael Pittman, he's the wide receiver one. There's no true wide receiver two here yet. There yet. Josh Downs, I think he'll have a really good year in his sophomore year. Donnie Mitchell has been looking great in camp, but again, no certified wide receiver two. do have a good running back there, but Pittman, always one of those guys who can get right around 1,000 yards. He's going to get you 5, 7 touchdowns usually, but I think I talked about this in another draft. I think if Anthony Richardson is healthy, Pittman could have his first double-digit touchdown year. He could potentially get up to 15 touchdowns. I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw that.
Isaiah Pacheco 212, Waddle 213, Lamar 214, DK 301, Kelsey 302, Mahomes 303. You go with your RB1 in James Cook at 304.
Yeah, I think James Cook for a PPR type standard draft is great. He's going to get you a lot of receptions out of the backfield. Last year was his really true breakout year, and he really didn't score any touchdowns. He's never been a big touchdown guy, and I think that could really change because there is no wide receiver one there from day one, like how there has been in Buffalo with Stephon Diggs. We're expecting Keon Coleman to be the number one wide receiver. We're expecting Don Kake to take a step forward. But James Cook out of the backfield, we know Josh Allen loves throwing the ball. He loves rushing the ball. I think that's one of the big things he takes away touchdowns there. But again, James Cook is for a PPR draft, PPR standard in third round of a 14 teamer. That's someone who I'll take because he's gonna get uh, low end wide receiver type production, at least in receptions. It feels like a flex guy, but he's going to be able to have that rushing upside. I mean, I don't think there's really anyone there to fight for that job at the RB1 position. I think he's so certified or solidified it last year, and I expect him to score more than what 4 touchdowns he had last year. I expect a lot more out of him.
Jalen Hurts 305. I selected Rashad White 306. I've always liked Rashad White this season. I didn't in years past, even though I would draft shares of him, but he is a PPR running back. And I think in today's day and age, with the running back committees that a lot of teams utilize, I think PPR running backs are vital. So I'm going to draft Rashad White as much as I can. I know Bucky Irving was selected by Tampa Bay. I saw reports that he's going to be a vital piece of that offense to an extent, but I'm still buying the Rashad White hype. They signed Baker to a new extension this offseason. Baker loves throwing to his running backs, and Rashad White had great production. Even though Irving could get some time, I do think that Rashad White's value is there. So I got A-Chain and White as my running backs and PPR backs for that matter, and I was really pleased about that. Jacobs 307, Ayuk 308, Nico Collins 309, Mike Evans 310, DJ Moore 311, Mixon 312, Andrews 313, Kamara 314, Diggs 401, Mari 402, Debo 403, Neighbors 404, Richardson 405, Cooper Kupp 406, Aaron Jones 407, Trey McBride 408, and I go Devontae Smith 409. Again, a guy I don't think I've had really any shares of in my fantasy career, but Devontae Smith is a guy that I'm definitely drafting this year. I really like the 1-2 punch with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. I also think Jalen Hurts' production is going to go down slightly because of his rushing value. He had a lot of fantasy points based on his tush push. Now, I think teams are going to be able to stack up against that better. And I also think with Jason Kelsey, a Hall of Famer, retiring, that's going to limit his rushing capabilities and his rushing stats. I think he's going to use a lot more of throwing the football. A.J. Brown's going to get a lot of attention, both by Jalen Hurts and the defenders. So I really think that Devontae Smith is going to be kind of a silent killer, a guy that could get you 5 receptions a game, but over 100 yards and maybe a couple touchdowns. Kenneth Walker, 410, and then you selected James Conner, 411.
Yeah, James Conner, I've never been the biggest fan of him for fantasy, but this last year kind of proved me wrong. Last 2 years, a little bit of health thing going on, 13 games in each year in Arizona. I guess he had 6 his first year in Arizona. But last year in 13 games, still had over 1,000 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns. Uh, I mean, Arizona in the last time he played 15 games, he had 15 touchdowns. And that was without Kyler Murray for the first part of the year. He also had decent amount of receptions throughout his career. He's going to give you 30 to 40 receptions around there, a couple receiving touchdowns, right around 300 receiving yards. I think with Marvin Harrison Jr. there, Trey McBride standing out, they aren't able to really stack the box, especially with Kyler Murray for how mobile he is. They're not going to be able to kind of have an extra linebacker in there watching over a guy like James Conner. They're going to have to spread out that defense a little bit more. I think it's going to open up the field, especially the running game, not just with Kyler, but again, James Conner. James Conner is still being pretty productive, 29 years old, 30 years old is kind of that benchmark where guys kind of start slowing down. And this is really James Conner's last year to be able to prove that he deserves another contract.
Tank Dell 412, his teammate CJ Stroud 413, Pickens 414, Kincaid 501, Montgomery 502, Zay Flowers 503, and then you selected T. Higgins 504.
Yeah, T. Higgins, if he's in Cincinnati or not, I think that he's still a good draft, some good player to draft. I mean, 12 games last year, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. Not the best year, but he's also never been a huge touchdown guy. Honestly, 5 and 12 games is pretty solid when he's only really scored 6 or 7 and playing 15, 16 games. 1,000 yard wide receiver for most of the time, 900 his rookie year, and then 1,000 the next 2 years. Last year, down year, missed some time. But again, he's been solid. I don't care where he goes. I don't care if he gets traded or I don't care if he's the number two wide receiver there. Because if he is the number two wide receiver, Tyler Boyd isn't there. He's getting replaced with Trey Burton, I believe it is, out of Alabama. Burton, I think, was like a fifth round pick or something, fourth round pick. And I don't know how much trust they really have in him quite yet. I mean, Jamar Chase is gonna get majority of the targets there, but say if he isn't there, probably gonna be the wide receiver one at most other places that he goes to, and he's gonna get a lot of targets. And even if he's the wide receiver two, I still expect him to get more targets because most teams' wide receiver one isn't as good as Jamar Chase.
Yeah. Calvin Ridley 505. I selected Joe Burrow, who will be throwing the ball to T. Higgins at the moment, at 506. Look, I've always liked Joe Burrow as far as fantasy quarterbacks are concerned. I think he's one of those guys that gets exactly what you ask for when you draft him. He's not going to blow you away having 10 rushes for 80 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. We'll get the occasional rushing touchdown, whether it's fourth and goal on the 1 yard line or a 4 yard scramble, whatever, but he throws the ball very efficiently. And he's got a great wide receiver core again at the moment. If things change, that could alter. But the biggest thing with him has been his health. When he's healthy, he's one of the best, maybe top five quarterbacks consistently year in and year out. And at this the fifth round here, I wanted a sure quarterback, so I got Joe Burrow, and I was very pleased with that. The biggest thing is hopefully can he stay healthy? You can never really predict injuries. Keenan Allen 507, Kittle 508, Zach Moss 509, Godwin 510, Pitts 511, Ramondre 512, Rashee Rice 513, Kyler 514, Swift 601, Prescott 602, Evan Ingram 603, Christian Kirk 604, Deontay Johnson 605, Zamir White 606, 607 Terry McLaurin, 608 Najee Harris, and I selected Jaden Reed 609. Look, I'm a Vikings fan. I drafted a Packer. It hurt my soul a little bit, but I'm excited about Jaden Reed. I mean, I said this in a previous mock draft. I think of Jaden Reed kind of as the next Deebo Samuel, which is a very high comparison. I understand that, but similar play style. I mean, he's still relatively very young in this league, actually, and he's going to run the ball at the wide receiver position. He's going to catch the ball, and Jordan Love and him had a really good connection. I really think you should invest heavy on the Packers wide receivers just because there's a lot of young options there. I believe they're the second youngest team in the league, and Jaden Reed's going to be, amongst some of these young guns that they have to really kind of be some fantasy sleepers going into the season. D Hop 6'10, and you selected Jordan Love 6'11.
Yeah, I can't lie. Jordan Love, I missed on him. I was a big Jordan Love hater early
I
on
was too.
last year. I mean, you're a Vikings fan. That makes sense. But
That's partial, yeah.
I had no reason to, and I was completely wrong. He proved me wrong last year. Jordan Love, like you mentioned, Jaden Reed, and investing in those wide receivers there at the Packers. He's got weapons. He's got Josh Jacobs, who's a really good receiving back. Uh, I don't know other really running back there is a good receiving back, but I mean, guys like Reed, other guys on the roster, Romeo Dobbs, I think he's a solid wide receiver three there. Christian Watson, if he's able to stay healthy, I think he had last like 3 games of the year 2 years ago, his rookie year. He was averaging 150, 170 receiving yards with like 2 touchdowns a game or something like that. Those wide receivers are good there. They're young. They've had little bit of injury history between all three of them, but even then, Jordan Love was able to do it on the ground as well. Not a super mobile quarterback, but he was able to get it done when needed, and he was able to do a lot, especially with those two young tight ends they have, Musgrave and I always forget the other one, uh, Croft or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Tucker Crafts
Kraft,
or
yeah,
something
Tucker
like that.
Kraft. Two young tight ends there. I know one's more of a blocking tight end, but even then, you have that set of two young tight ends. One of them could emerge, be more of that receiving threat. I mean, he just has weapons all around him. And that division, really outside of the Bears and Lions, they have good defenses, but outside of that, I mean, the Vikings defense got a little bit worse last year in this offseason. But they've just been a powerhouse last year, and I don't really expect it to slow down.
Tony Pollard 6'12, Jalen Warren 6'13, Brooks 6'14, Hollywood 701, Odunze 702, Raheem 703, and unfortunately, right before me, you selected my guy, Jake Ferguson, at 704.
Yeah, Ferguson's been growing on me. You've been drafting him a lot, and I've been stealing him the last couple mock
It's
drafts.
been really annoying, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it was one of those things that the first like two tiers of tight ends were gone, and I didn't really want to get stuck with like a Njoku, Brock Bowers as like my number one tight end at the moment, especially because Njoku don't really have any these question marks around him if he's able to really do what he did with Deshaun Watson, and Brock Bowers should be good, but he's on the Raiders. Ferguson, I mean, I always talk about Dak Prescott likes to throw the ball 40 times a game. He likes getting to that 35 touchdown mark, and he likes getting to roughly that 45 to 5,000 yard mark for passing yards. Ferguson's going to have to be there. Brandon Cooks, decent wide receiver too. CeeDee Lamb's great, but Ferguson last year kind of had some struggles. Was more of a touchdown guy, it felt like early on in the red zone, which honestly I'm fine with my Titan just being a touchdown guy. But Ferguson should take a step forward, especially with how well he was able to play towards the end of the year. I think he started taking tremendous steps forward.
Christian Watson 705. I selected Jordan Addison 706. I was gonna go Ferguson, but he got selected by AJ. Look, Addison, we all know is off the field stuff. A year ago, it was because his dog was having an emergency, so he drove like 154 miles an hour on the 395. This year, DUI, like literally probably 2 weeks after Kyrie Jackson was killed, and I think there was well, they say there was alcohol involved. I mean, who knows exactly, but it's just a rough spot, right? Another thing, it's like, Jordan, seriously, like, come on. So who knows what's going to happen as far as a suspension or anything like that, but if he's on the field, he's a really good option. And TJ Hawkinson's going to be gone for a good chunk of the year, so it's going to be Addison and Jefferson. And funny enough, I drafted both on my team, but you'll notice in a 14 and a 16 team, I kind of pair along guys just because, like, look, at the end of the day, like, your starting lineup has to be so important because it's a 14, it's a 16 team league. So you might as well pair along some guys, because if Jefferson goes down or Addison goes down, or you could play both. And you'll kind of see when I kind of mix them together, like, you kind of have to take risks like that. So I was pleased with Jordan Addison, but again, a lot of question marks with him so far and continuing on. Purdy 707, Daniel 708, JSN 709, McConkey 710, Tua 711, Caleb Williams 712, Tyjae Spears 713, Brian Robinson 714, Chubb 801, Eckler 802, Javante Williams 803, Singletary 804, Lockett 805, Brian Thomas Jr. 806, Zeke 807. Then we started getting weird. Ravens 808, and then I selected Chase Brown 809. I like Chase Brown a lot. I like him more than Zach Moss, and I think a lot of people think I'm insane for that. But I mean, look, Zach Moss, yeah, he's out with some injuries. Chase Brown has been with the Bengals, and he looked good, to be honest, last year for the Bengals. I thought he could have easily been the starting running back if it wasn't for Joe Mixon. But now Chase Brown and Zach Moss gets a shot. I don't look at their depth chart often, so I can't give you a firm answer. Who's going to be the running back one? Who's going to get more touches? I think you're going to have to see a little bit in the preseason, kind of what happens there. But I'm excited about Chase Brown, and I already got two solid options at Rashad Weiss and Devon Achane. I'll take a risk on a guy like Chase Brown because he's not going to be playing my flex unless I have a lot of injuries or suspensions, etc. Super excited, though, about that Chase Brown 809. Benson 810, and then you selected Jerome Ford 811.
Yeah, I know Nick Chubb was drafted earlier in this round, but I really don't know. I mean, his injury was so bad last year, and I get it. He's had almost a full year now to recover. He was just squatting like 500 pounds the other day.
Well, that's just Nick Chubb.
Instagram. Yeah, but that's just Nick Chubb. But he tore his what ACL, MCL, PCL, all the CLs. He tore all of them. They're all gone. And Jerome Ford was really good in the receiving game last year. Granted, again, with Joe Flacco and on a team that threw the ball like 45 times a game, and he was just a gunslinger. It's kind of different from Deshaun Watson, but I just don't know how Nick Chubb's going to come back. I mean, we haven't seen someone completely blow out their knee like that and come back to be the same player as they were. I get Chubb was what consensus top three, top two running back in fantasy. So was Adrian Peterson before he blew out his knee. I don't hope that to Nick Chubb, but the last time we really saw something along those lines, such a dominant running back have such a big leg injury, knee injury like that, really wasn't that good afterwards. I mean, he had some little bit of production, but I don't know. I'm hoping. right now, Ford is more of that flex guy potentially, more of that receiving threat there, and just not hoping Nick Chubb stays injured. I want him to be healthy because it's fun watching him play, but it's one of those things. Again, we just don't know how he's going to come back, and I'm going to take that safety blanket pick here with a guy who could potentially finish as a top 15 RB if he does get majority of the snaps and something does happen to, or there is a setback with Nick Chubb.
Curtis Samuel, 812. We get weird again with Jets and the Browns to follow. Corum, 901. Edwards, 902. Sutton, 903. You selected another guy I was hoping to select, 904. Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy, I think he can be really good this year. I've always had question marks around drafting the fastest wide receiver from a rookie wide receiver. We've seen it, John Brown, Henry Ruggs, different situations there, but
Yeah, I
there's
was going to
always
say, well,
there's always been injuries. Usually, I know that Henry Ruggs had injuries before he all that happened. Before
yeah.
he wanted to be like Jordan Addison,
Yeah.
or and with just all those guys, John Brown who had an injury career. I mean, Worthy's dealing with a hamstring injury. He's missed beginning of camp right now. I get they Marquise Brown they've signed. I don't really believe Marquise Brown. Never really have been. Even when he was with Kyler last year. Even when he was with Lamar, he couldn't really do that much. The only really wide receiver I trust there, and he's not a wide receiver, it's Travis Kelsey. Rasheed Rice is going to miss, I think, the first 3 games it came out to be. If Worthy's able to step into that wide receiver spot from day one, not day one, week one, there, and is able to have a couple big games, Rasheed Rice may get to the move down to that number 2 spot, and especially with Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes has a cannon back there, and he has now the fastest wide receiver ever in the combine history. I'm gonna take that risk there, especially because with my other wide receivers, I think I have it locked down on my 1 and 2, and even at my flex position as another wide receiver. I'm at this point I have to take risks. It's 14 team. It's go big or go home. You need to be able to have guys who hit and draft guys earlier than what they are projected.
Keon Coleman, 905. I selected Zach Charbonnet, 906. I've drafted a lot of Zach Charbonnet, and I'll continue to do so. I was wrong on him last year in the fact that I thought he was going to have more production than he did, but I'm excited about him this year with that new offense, that new look for Seattle. Look, he's a goal line guy. I know Kenneth Walker is as well, but I think they're going to loosen the load a little bit on Kenneth Walker. And to be quite frank, in a 14-team league, it's my RB4. I'm taking a risk just because if the rewards are going to pay out tremendously. Is he a guy I'm going to be starting unless Kenneth Walker goes down? No. So I'm going to go with Charbonnet there as more of a safety blanket with high risk, high reward, just kind of hang on my bench. Because again, you got to take risk. I mean, only one team wins, so you got to find areas to take risk on. Dobbins 907, Niners D 908, Jacoby Myers 909, Jameson Williams 910, Joshua Palmer 911, Kendre Miller 912, McLaughlin 913, Dobbs 914, Mike Williams 1001, Marshawn Lloyd 1002, Chuba Hubbard 1003, Rico Dowdle 1004, Bowers 1005, Njoku 1006, Tyler Algier 1007, Ty Chandler 1008. I selected Josh Downs 1009. Really didn't like the pick. I'm not a big Josh Downs guy, but again, I have 4 wide receivers ahead of Josh Downs. I think he's a guy that's a little risky right now, but could have a lot of upside on the Indianapolis Colts offense, which I'm excited to watch this season. So, kind of one of those situations I drafted him, hang on to. Hopefully, something happens down the line. Cowboys 10-10, and then you went with your guy Rashid Shaheed 10-11.
Yeah, Rashid Shaheed's going to be the number 2 wide receiver there. And in this offense, I think he's going to have even bigger step forward. Last year, they were more in a kind of a set offense. Now they're doing a lot more play action with Clint Kubiak as the head coordinator, which was the former head offensive coordinator of the 49ers, who obviously did a lot of play action, a lot of on the roll or on the move passes. And that's exactly what Derek Carr thrives in, is that West Coast run around, play action type of plays. And he's one of those guys. Just get the ball to him and get him in space. His first 2 touches or 3 touches in his NFL career, his rookie year, all were touchdowns. He's a big play guy. That's really all he was used for last year. Even though he was a Pro Bowler, he was only a Pro Bowler for special teams. Even though he had like 700 yards and I think 4 to 5 touchdowns, I expect that to go way up, especially with how much they should be passing here and how much is another year that Derek Carr has a connection with them. I don't think Derek Carr's going to have a great year, but I think that if he has the same type of year has last year, I think Shaheed should have a lot more targets there than what we saw last year.
Khalil Shakir 10-12, Gibson 10-13, Jalen Wright 10-14, AD Mitchell 11-01, Roshan 11-02, Dotson 11-03, and you selected Jared Goff as your backup quarterback at 11-04.
Yeah, I just wanted to go get the quarterbacks that are going to be the Vikings every year. Jared
Fair.
Goff there. I love their weapons. Amon-Ra is great. Gibbs and Montgomery on the backfield are great. Laporta's great. I think Jameson Williams is gonna have a huge year this year. Huge year in comparison to what we've seen out of him. I think he'll have really good wide receiver two stats there, but they expect him to be a lot more than just a go route specialist. That's why I've been calling him. He's just a go route specialist right now until he proves something else. But even then, a go route specialist for a quarterback who can't really open up the field at times, mainly because Monroe's not really that. It's one of those things that he just has weapons, and if that's all he needs one his number two wide receiver to do, then I'll take dump offs to Laporta and Monroe and let them go create, or honestly, Jameer Gibbs out of the backfield.
Elijah Mitchell, 11:05. I selected Dallas Goedert, 11:06. I kind of did my strategy backwards. I drafted my tight end a little too late. I'm not pleased with Goddard, but I worked on depth instead of prioritizing tight end, which I usually like to do anyways, because I don't ever draft good tight ends, it seems like. But Goddard's one of those guys that I think is just going to give you 8 to 10 points every week. Like he's one of those guys that's going to get you just what you need to survive. And sometimes that works for people, depending on your roster. Sometimes it doesn't. But there is that upside there with that Philadelphia Eagles offense and that explosiveness. And again, I paired him alongside Devontae Smith. But I really think that, it's just a safe option. It's not a tight end that's going to win me, my fantasy championship, but it's going to be my tight end that does enough. I probably should have drafted a bit of a better tight end. I was hoping to with Jake Ferguson, but I got screwed on that. So I kind of had to go with plan B. And that's what's going to happen when you have drafts that don't go your way or picks that don't go your way. You got to find ways to adjust and select the best player available. And for me, that was Goddard. Herbert, 11:09. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 11:08. Ray Davis, 11:09. Chiefs, 11:10. Hawkinson, 11:11. Leggett, 11:12. Brandon Cooks, 11:13. Jerry Jeudy, 11:14. Freiermuth, 12:01. Vidal, 12:02. Schultz, 12:03. Steelers. Tyrone Tracy, 12:05. Pierce, 12:06. Darnell Mooney, 12:07. Rashad Bateman, 12:08. I selected Dontavian Wicks, 12:09. I paired him alongside Jaden Reed. I like Dontavian Wicks because a lot of podcasts that I listen to like Dontavian Wicks, and I'm just going to take their advice on it. He is progressing well in camp. I've seen a lot of reports of the Dontavian Wicks improving drastically. And I think he's got a great opportunity, especially as my wide receiver six on my team, to be a guy that I could use on my lineup as a wide receiver two or flex position, depending on how that Packers offense operates. So again, a risky pick here, but one that I feel comfortable with. Now I got two young Packers wide receivers, which again pains me, but if one of them were to break off, or if they both were to break off, I'd be in a great position. Troy Franklin, 12:10. Komet, you selected at 12:11.
Yeah, Cole Kmet, I really don't know how to think what his season's or how to predict his season. I mean, they have three great wide receivers there, but if Caleb Williams, if he hits from week one and he's a top five quarterback, top 10 quarterback every week, I'm gonna have to make assumption that Cole Kmet's gonna have to be in that, have to be at least a part in that. I get it. They have Roma Doomsday, they have DJ Moore, who I think they just extended to like a 4 year,
Yeah.
$110 million
Mhm.
deal. And they have Keenan. I get it. And he also had DeAndre Swift, a good, decent receiving back. But if Caleb Williams hits and he has a lot of production early on, or just throughout the season, Cole Kmet has to be a part of that. Will he have as big a season as he did last year with Justin Fields because it was really only Kmet and DJ Moore in the receiving room? No, I don't expect that. But I'm also drafting him as my tight end too, to be able to for Ferguson's bye week or for the matchup difference or potential injury. I just kind of want to get someone in there who has a good name. I mean, he has a good fancy name. He was drafted late last year or even undrafted with a lot of teams. And again, he finished, I think, as top 15, top 12, I believe, tight end. I think he was just outside the top 10 because did miss 2 weeks, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks there. But again, Cole Kmet, drafting him as a backup, I think that he could potentially be one of those guys who, if Caleb Williams hits, then they're going to be throwing the ball a lot there because, the Bears kind of sucked for a while. So if they're able to have any type of upside, any type of good plays, they're just going to try to use Caleb as much as possible, make fans happy.
Musgrave 12-12, Michael Wilson 12-13, Deontay Foreman 12-14, Roman Wilson 13-01, Justice Hill 13-02, Gainwell 13-03, and to top things off, you selected the third guy I was going to draft, but with good reason because it's your guy, Bucky Irving at the 13-04.
Yeah, I love Bucky. He was my running back last year. I'm an Oregon Ducks fan, so he was my running back. Bucky, I think, should have a really good year this year. I think that a lot of people aren't expecting it because Rashad White's there. But honestly, Tampa hates Rashad White. He's been there for 3 years now, I want to say. And they give him the ball. He's had production when he's gotten the ball, but they hate giving him the ball. I don't know for what reason. I think Rashad White's a really talented running back, but if that trend keeps on going, Bucky Irving's right there. I think he was a fourth round pick to them. Uh, he was my number two running back. Maybe there's some bias there for sure in this draft, but I love the situation he went to. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to see him play my Saints twice a year and probably have multi touchdown games there. But if I get him in fantasy and I start him because of that, then you know what? I'll take the trade off of him scoring 2 touchdowns and me getting the fantasy points.
Miles Sanders 13-05, I selected Braylon Allen 13-06. At this point, I mean, I just draft him because why not, right? I mean, there was so much upside with Braylon Allen. He's like a freak. I mean, I watched him just destroy the Iowa defense in the Big Ten. I mean, all Wisconsin running backs just do. And he's, I think, in a ways, more more athletic than Jonathan Taylor, but could be a better talent than Jonathan Taylor. He was in college, that's for sure. So running back 6, running back 7 on my team, why not? Hold on to a guy like him. Will Shipley 1307, Hunter Henry 1308, Madison 1309, Keaton Mitchell 1310, Gabe Davis 1311, Herbert 1312, Rogers 1313, Estime 1314, J Tuck, Aubrey, Dolphins, AJ Dillon, Likely, Texans, Bigsby, Lawrence. I selected Butker, Thielen, you selected Eagles, Koo, Mims, Fant, and then Sanders, Moody, Lions. You selected Fairbairn, Gay, Buffalo's defense. I selected Jake Elliott, Myers, McPherson, Bass, Dicker the kicker, Carlson, Saints, and the Bears round out that mock draft. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter at The Truth as one to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast days, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you guys looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp through focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity, while also maintaining an ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15 for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.